Hello. Are you there, Ms. Lipman?
Hi, good morning.
Good morning. I'm good. Hello, everybody. This is Dan O'Connor, if you're new to this transmission, and this is Heather Lipman.
Hello, everyone.
Heather, tell a little bit about what you do. She is an expert. As far as I know, she is the expert when it comes to job hunting, especially in the year 2020, and things like resumes and those questions to ask during interviews, all that good stuff.
Yes. So I'm a resume writer, but the way I describe my services is I move people from the seat they're in now to the seat they envision in their dream job. I have a philosophy, which is folks don't have to settle only on the opportunities that are advertised as vacant. But if you know where you want to be and you know you can do the job, our partnership's going to open that door.
Great.
Exciting.
Heather, I apologize. I'm getting a feedback. Is your sound on?
Yeah.
I think, is that you that's echoing or is it me? I apologize, everybody.
You have the booming voice of Heather all around you. I don't know why.
Now that's me. One moment and let me adjust my sound. I think, is that you that's echoing or is it me? I apologize, everybody. Okay. And the booming voice of Dan.
Just booming all over the place.
One moment and I will get rid of that. Okie dokie.
The genius of Dan O'Connor is that he is a jack of all trades in every area. Yeah. Technology.
Oh, that's it. Okay. Here we go. One moment, please. Configuration.
And what he's demonstrating for everyone right now, folks, is how to remain calm under pressure. And he's doing fabulous.
Thank you. Okay, so here we go. We have, here we go. And what he's demonstrating for everyone right now, folks, is how to remain calm. Okay, so we have echo cancellation. There we go.
Puppy in the background while we're waiting, right?
Okay,
there.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Can you hear me okay, Heather?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Oh, Heather. Okay. See, this was not happening during our test run. Okay, let me get this. Okay. Microphone. Got that right? Yep, I can hear you perfectly. Okay. Here we go. So, Heather. Oh, rats.
Hold on. Let me try to mute and see if that helps.
Okay. I apologize. Give me 2 more minutes because I have to get rid of this sound problem that I have. Let me chat. Let's test out. Let's do what? Hey, that sounds great. Now all of a sudden. Nope, it doesn't. Okay.
Good. That sounds better. You've muted yourself. So I'm just going to go to Google and think how to remove. Oh, wait, you're on mute. You're muted.
I have to tell you, Heather, we have 3 resumes that we're going to be reviewing today. Well, that you'll be reviewing. And yes. Normally, by the way, for those of you who are getting a review by Heather, that is, oh, hey, it all of a sudden sounds perfect. Oh,
it does.
No. Anyway, I'm on mute. Am I still on mute?
No.
Okay. That is a super huge deal because I was just talking with Heather about some resumes that she was reviewing and they're $750 and up.
Yes.
Okay. I'm still having the sound problem. So as Heather reviews those resumes, take your time, Heather. This is not your problem. I'm going to fix the sound problem while you take a look at those. Because when I come back, Heather's going to start off giving us some tips on resume writing. And the biggest question that I have, Heather, is about that question you told me that you instruct people to say during the interview. And it's the $1 million question, you know the one I'm talking about. I'll be right back, okay?
Okay.
I'm going to chat with our host and see if they can help me fix this.
All right. Well, while Dan's doing that,
I'll be back.
He'll be back. We came here to talk about resumes. This is something I know intimately well. It's important to think of your resume as the first phase in a sales cycle. Now, your job is to answer the employer's question. And so if we think about it in terms of problem solving, we'll envision a funnel. So a company is hiring, which means they have a problem that needs to be solved. What problem needs to be solved? Well, we know that usually by their job advertisement or some of the posts they'll put online. We could also sort of glean some of the reasons behind they might be hiring, if there's any news on the company or any external factors that would make it obvious. There are plenty of layoffs happening right now. So lots of things are shifting in the corporate America industry. So when we think about getting a job, something I like to call opportunity acquisition, which really feeds off of the function of talent acquisition. So in opportunity acquisition, it's sort of a reverse engineered process of getting a job. Rather than going online, searching Indeed or searching Google and saying, okay, what options are available to me to pursue right now? There is another approach that I've found great success with, which is, well, let's ask the talent, you're the talent, the person looking for a job, where do you want to be? Where do you find that you're going to add the most value? Where are you going to be happiest? Because that's where you're going to perform your best. And so let's say somebody is, let's say a enthusiast for nature. And so perhaps they'd want to work at a company that is either nonprofit based or at a corporate company that has a strong philanthropic wing that caters to natural relief or restoration initiatives. What we could do is basically study our target. So that's going to be where you want to land, and craft a candidate marketing package from that vantage point. And with all of the data in hand, and the data is going to be who works there, where do they come from, what do they like? And we know all these things because people talk a lot online. They post things, they comment on things, they share things. We could research the company in general and the industry and see what the needs are for a company like them at this current moment. And then we have a direction to go. And I strongly believe that it's best to start writing a resume, to start rewriting your LinkedIn profile, to start prepping for an interview once you have a direction in mind. And I'll tell you why. A lot of people come to me and say, I don't know what I want to do, but I just need a better resume. And I say, okay, that's great. Are you happy in your current job? And they say no. And I say, do you want a job that's like the one you have now? And they'll say no. And I say, well, then you really don't want me to just make your resume better, because really what that's going to do is just qualify you once again for the same job you're already in that you don't really like. So I have a background in nonprofit management. I have an MBA in nonprofit business management, and I worked in that sector for a couple of years. It was really noble work. I have an intrinsic need to help people, but it wasn't a great fit for my skill set, and it wasn't a great fit for me personally at that time. I found a job as an executive recruiter for a life science search and placement company. So big companies like big pharmaceutical companies would pay the agency I worked for a large fee for people like myself and my coworkers to basically go out into the talent market and find a very specific person to place in that position. That's talent acquisition. So I look at the lens of opportunity acquisition in the same way. Rather than being someone who has a bunch of jobs and just looking for, a heartbeat and a warm body to fill that position, I like talent to really come up with where they want to go and build out the strategy from there. We build a roadmap from where you are today to where you want to be. And that looks different for every single person. So that may mean that your resume needs a total revamp. It could be the case that you're talking a lot about great things you've done, but none that really apply to the position at hand. And again, with this frame of mind, can you solve my problem? That's the only thing that needs to be on the resume you submit to that job. So now a lot of people will think, I have to write a custom resume for every single job. Well, that depends. How happy do you want to be? You don't have to do that. But if you really want to take the driver's seat and take control of your future, well, then I highly recommend it. Think about it like dating. If you're on a dating website and you come across a profile that says, I'm looking for a heartbeat, you know, tempos.
You really want to take
And, or you're come across a profile that says, I'm looking for, let's use myself for example, 30-year girl with a background in talent acquisition. I'm obviously more attracted to the profile that's looking for me. So resume your business. And when you speak directly to the interests of the person reviewing it, you capture their attention, you cut through the noise of all the other applicants who didn't see any value in customizing their resume, and you become, you know, on the top of that stack. And I really like to believe when I write a resume that I know is the one that's going to be picked and selected to advance to the interview. You know, sometimes I'll suggest folks send a cold outreach message and encourage the hiring manager to save his or her time. There's no need to interview anyone else. I'm here. I'm ready. I can solve your problem right now. Here's my resume. It demonstrates precisely how I've solved that problem before and recently. And so let me pause there and bring Dan back in and see what he thinks, if he's listening. There he is, smiling. Secondly, the next phase of the hiring life cycle is obviously to get the interview. So we've got all of these static documents.
Thank you, Heather. Of course I'm listening. That's awesome. I appreciate that. I'm going to turn my volume down so I don't cause this echo.
Okay.
The biggest question that I have so far is, you were saying
Yeah.
that I don't have to write a new resume for every person. By the way, before I go any further, I wanted to clarify, I am so glad that you're here, Heather, because I just put out a video on writing resumes and the biggest tips that were the biggest tips when I was writing resumes back in the day. And I made the huge mistake. So please, anyone who noticed, hear me as I apologize. They should only be, they do not need to only be one page. Is that correct, Heather?
So it's a great question. This is the answer, and this is the theme of my entire approach. It needs to be as long as it takes to communicate that you are the person to solve the problem. If you can do that in one line, that would be amazing. That's actually like what I aspire to do one day, is create a one-line resume for somebody, because less is more. People don't want to read that much. If, for example, you have a lot of experience that will add and advance your attractiveness as a candidate for that position, and that takes 2 pages, then so be it. Let me see if I turn my volume down. Now, what Dan is addressing is,
thank you, Heather. By the way, the reason I paused so long is because there's a big delay in the transmission. So I'm not just zoning out if you see me do that. Thank you very much.
Worry.
So 2 pages is cool.
My mom is texting me that we look great and we sound great. So I'm sure the whole audience feels the exact same way, despite our echo and technical difficulties. So again, you know, the length of the resume really is as long as it takes to capture the ability to convince its reviewer that you're the person for the job. So that's it.
Thank you, Ms. Lippman. I'm trying to,
Okay. Are you still having echoes?
Great. But no more, right? Like as soon as I think I've accomplished that, that's it.
You don't want to include information that isn't relevant to the reviewer, because one, it communicates to the reviewer that you don't understand what he or she needs. So if, you know, for example, you have, you know, an award from 5 years ago because you won the, I don't know, Los Angeles region spelling bee, and you're applying for a job as a chef. And you include on your resume that's pursuing an opportunity as a chef that you're Los Angeles's #1 speller. That's confusing. It's confusing to the reviewer, and sure, it's a great achievement. It might just not be the appropriate place to talk about it now. Also, what I've found is with points like that, it's better to save it for the interview. Some of those awkward silent moments when you might want to fill it up with some, you know, small talk or drop some nuggets of attractiveness in this area or that area. But when you lead with it in your resume, to me, it it really reads as though they're not understanding the needs of the employer. And that won't instill the most confidence in the reviewer that you can walk on the floor and from day one hit the ground running. So it's a case-by-case basis. The only 3 rules that really apply to any resume all the time, anywhere, are 1, obviously spelling and grammatical errors. Number 2, it's important to have consistent
Thank you.
format and white space. And then number 3, I believe that people read in a rhythm. And so when we include adjectives or duties or achievements, I always include them in 3. It's almost like you're writing a song for the reviewer. And there should be a flow. If you picture an upside down triangle, the top of the triangle should qualify you as the exact right fit for the position. That may be done with a resume, headline or title. So let's use Dan as an example. Let's say communications expert. Right below that headline, I'm going to include a couple of sentences that do 4 things very strategically. The first one is going to basically introduce Dan, what I call the elevator pitch. I am Dan. I have 20 years experience changing people's lives and making organizations happen. Obviously, that's not something I'd say, but really it's the who am I statement. The second sentence is going to address the qualifications that are required for this position. The third sentence is going to substantiate them, with a lead in. So that sounds usually something like demonstrated success in or adept with. And it's going to basically convey the results of those qualifications you just listed in the previous sentence. And then the final sentence is going to value match. So if the organization's mission is to make the world happier, well, then you're going to be the candidate whose personal passion is to make the world happier. And what you've done already in the top 1/3 of the page, without even looking at any of your actual experience, is you said, hi, I'm the right person for the job. This is my name. This is what I do. This is how well I do it. And by the way, I love to do it for the same reason you're in business. Without even looking at any of your actual experience, you said, hi, I'm the right person for the job. This is my name. This is what I do. Dan, can we see people's comments? Hold on. Maybe we can right here in this little comments tab.
Such a fantastic outline. I love the way you put it. The triangle. Now, by the way, could you please give everybody a little bit of, I apologize. Go ahead.
Oh, no, keep going. And I just realized I didn't finish the description of the upside down triangle, but I got it. So keep going and then I'll come back to it. So Dan and I are never this quiet. It's actually kind of funny to watch us wait for one of our voices to echo.
You got it? Okay. I was going to ask you to elaborate on it a little bit because
yes.
the headline, love, that's very clear.
He's laughing.
Right? When you were talking about the elevator pitch.
Yes.
I think that's a fantastic thing for everybody to have on a personal basis for when we need it, for when we need to promote ourselves. Could
Absolutely.
You go into a little bit of detail about how you would structure that? For example, give somebody a basic format for an elevator pitch. Hi, I'm so-and-so and I do blankety blank, period. How do you structure an elevator pitch or a value added
personal branding?
Whatever that is.
Absolutely. So again, now the words can always be rearranged so long as the message integrity remains intact. The message integrity is always speaking to what somebody cares about. So I'm going to use myself as an example. I'm a recruiter. I'm in certain areas of the industry, I'm a headhunter. In other areas of the industry, I'm a recruiter. In other areas of the industry, I might be a staffer. According to me, in my own area of the industry, I'm an opportunity acquisition specialist. And so knowing my audience, I'm going to use the verbiage respective to that audience. So an elevator pitch for me would be something like, if I was speaking with, an organization that has a large in-house talent acquisition team, let's use Nike, for example. Nike's slogan is just do it. So I'm going to keep that in mind first and foremost. So I let them know that we have the same values. We're aligned in our personal and business missions. I'm in the elevator. Hi, Mr. Nike president. I'm Heather Lippman. I'm a talent acquisition expert. I've been working on retained search for the past 10 years. I find the needle in the haystack. It doesn't matter what it takes. I just get it done. Now, I'm not necessarily feeding them back their slogan, I just do it, because that might be a little cheesy and a little off putting. It might not be. It depends on with whom you're speaking. But essentially, that elevator pitch would sound like this to Aerotech, which is a high volume staffing agency. I'd say, hi, I'm Heather. I have 10 years of experience recruiting. I'm a beast with high volume cold outreach, and I don't stop until the position is closed. And that usually takes me about 10 days. So the elevator pitch conveys the same skill set, but Nike in that example cares more about finding the exact right person, which very likely doesn't take 10 days, as opposed to Aerotech, which cares about filling a lot of positions very quickly. Their metrics are based on time to fill, time to close. And so that's what Aerotech cares about versus Nike. Thanks, Renee. Appreciate that. Awesome. Everyone is being super supportive and letting us know that the audio sounds great.
I'd like everybody to notice. I'd like everyone to notice, if you haven't noticed yet, why I choose Heather as my go-to expert, because Heather uses no fillers.
No, it's all natural.
See? No fillers, no seal words, perfectly structured sentences, always puts the right subject in the right place. I'm just such a big fan of the way you communicate, Heather.
Oh my God.
Well, yeah. And I got a question from Bunny. Bunny, yes. Babadoo.
Yes, Bunny wants
what should you do about employment gaps on your resume?
Thank you, Bunny. That's a great question. So I will be completely candid. I'm no stranger to gaps in employment, and who is, to be quite honest. So there are very strategic ways to still represent your background in an attractive way without compromising integrity. We must be honest on the resume. That is absolutely the number one objective, is to tell the truth. If you lie on your resume and then you're hired, it's grounds for immediate termination. And so this is why I believe in the element of storytelling. So here's to answer Bunny's question. Gaps in the resume. Let's say I have a gap from 2018 to 2020. No, let's say I have a gap from, let's say I parted ways with an employer in November of 2018, and then I was hired somewhere else November of 2019. When I work in those situations, I remove the months and just put the years on the resume. And that way nobody knows that there's a gap and you're still telling the truth. You were at one company during 2019 and you were at another company during 2020. Another approach, and this is something that a lot of folks who are returning to work after caring for a family member, or maybe they just decided to travel the world for a couple months. Maybe they had some personal issues that needed their attention. When there's a gap, for whatever reason it is, we can still construct some material to fill in if it's a significant gap, or if we believe that it would work against you on your resume. And really, this is where I think my biggest strength comes in, which is actually interviewing. So I'll ask very strategic questions so that we can include some data points about some of the applicable skills. And the skills are applicable, we know, based on what the employer has advertised as what he or she needs, and we'll fill it in. So if someone took a year or two off to raise small children, they were still coordinating meetings and appointments. I'm sure they took their kids to the doctor. They were still perhaps looking at inventory levels and inventory management and ordering supplies. They were buying diapers, they were buying clothes. They were checking the cabinets and the cupboards to make sure there's enough applesauce or strawberries. My niece loves strawberries, so that was something that must have always been in the fridge. And so there are plenty of ways to use your experience, because the time passed. We did something during that time. It may not make sense in the moment that those skills as a, you know, a parent at home raising children are applicable to a marketing director, but I bet if we actually look a little deeper, that we'll find a way to bridge that gap. Sense in the moment that those skills as a, you know, a parent at home raising children are applicable to a marketing director. We have really nice audience members. They're just full of compliments. Thank you guys. That's so great.
Thank you. And by the way, what you just mentioned about taking that, what you were doing during that time and kind of crafting it into applicable skills for the position that you want.
Yes.
Would you, we have the best. And by the way, I'm going to post more of their comments if you haven't seen them. Everybody, just so that you know, if you're leaving comments or questions, I'm doing the best I can to filter them onto Heather. If they haven't shown up yet, they will.
I
all
see
come
them
to Heather.
too.
I'm just clicking them as fast as I can. But
yeah, no, you're good, Dan. I can see them also.
Put that creative story that you just mentioned,
yes,
as if it were a position, or how do you say during this time I learned how to schedule appointments and keep inventory? Where do you put that?
Wonderful. So that's a great question. Thanks for bringing that up. I mean, the truth is, if someone was doing all that inside the house, then they were doing it at home, self-employed, or, you know, leave of absence for child raising. You know, I'd obviously look up the term for something more professional than that. But, you know, we're not going to say that you did that for Whole Foods if that's not, in fact, where you were. But we're going to create the content below the title and the company and the length of time to be so compelling that it's almost an oversight by the reader. A lot of times people will think about, you know, if they were working for a neighbor, then they'll use the neighbor's business. Perhaps you just say you were freelancing. If the employer that you're pursuing asks for references, well, then you cross that bridge when you get to it. But my philosophy really is, you know, if someone under my partnership is going to get rejected for the job, it is absolutely never going to be because we didn't tell the truth. That's definitely not the case. I don't even know that I've had, you know, this happen with people. You know, I'm happy to report, like I said, 9 out of 10 of my clients are invited to interview within 72 hours of submitting their resume. And I've worked with all kinds of people with all kinds of stories. The other idea for gap employment is maybe you took a Udemy course. Maybe you went on YouTube every day and watched.
I was just going to ask you that.
Yeah, maybe you were studying. Maybe you were sharpening your skills.
Could you say that again, Heather? What is your success rate for getting people into the interview?
Oh, 9 out of 10 people are invited to interview within 72 hours of submission.
I was just going to ask you that.
Should you fill any employment gaps?
Could you say that again, Heather? What is your success rate for getting people into the interview?
Dan, maybe lower your volume a little. See if that helps. So Renee is
I was just going to show you that was another question that you just answered. But thank you, Renee, for your question.
Yes. Renee is asking, should you fill in any employment gaps, and how far do you
go back? My brother's watching this going,
and resume?
Ugh, he'll never learn.
So I go back typically 10 years. Anything beyond 10 years is kind of irrelevant, especially at the rate with which the technology that many of us use is evolving. And again, this brings me back to a point I made earlier, and I haven't forgotten yet about the upside down triangle. I'll still get back to that. But the point I made earlier, which I'm tying in here again in terms of the duration of content, is if I'm talking about something I did, no matter how fabulous it was 17 years ago, it almost looks desperate. I mean, it almost looks like I'm throwing out anything I can, everything I can. When a resume is tight and it's concise and it talks about recent experience, it conveys confidence. It conveys that someone's secure. And the last thing we want to convey during any job hiring process is that I'm desperate. I need the job now, and I'll take it for whatever you're offering, even if it's peanuts. So these little details, as we construct the resume, are all taken into account. And what I've noticed with people often is just having the conversation about those details really does something for their confidence. It really does something for their posture. I mean, they really leave the call with me with a much better understanding of their value right now based on what they've done recently. And, you know, typical achievements don't have to talk about increasing sales 60% or reducing turnover, you know, basically to zero. It can be oftentimes based in the context. So if we use that example of, you know, a new parent who took 2 years off to raise children in the home, maybe the context of that story is what's most important. Maybe one of those children have autism. Maybe one of those children, maybe they're twins. Maybe one of those children were adopted. All of these details, again, if we're targeting, you know, a company that deals with autism or that deals with twins, I don't know if companies deal with twins, but or that deals with, you know, adoption or fostering, those details stand out much more prominently than the fact that you weren't in somebody else's office for X amount of months carrying out those tasks. Because we're staying mission driven. So while Dan catches up, I'm really having fun. I'll just keep going.
Thank you so much. By the way,
Yeah.
thank you, Renee. Renee just said that she's an old lady because she's 50. And that must mean that my brother Marty, who's watching this, is an old man. Of course, I'm
Sorry,
not, I'm
Marty.
49. So I'm still a youngster, but thank you for reinforcing the fact that I tell my brother all the time, Renee, that he is in fact an old man. By the way, thank you, JN. I'm
going to use a prop here, Dan, to help.
Excuse me, I have to get back to that one. Oh, Bunny. Hey, look at Bunny. She just started a job as a sourcing administrator for YouTube. I bet you know what that means, don't you?
Yes, I do. I mean, so I don't know what sourcing means really outside of recruiting or talent acquisition. Actually, I'm sure I do. She's prospecting. She's going out into the talent market. She might be on LinkedIn all day looking who would be someone that could do this role and who is someone that might be interested that can do this role. So there are plenty of ways to see the the forest among the trees or the trees among the forest. If I'm looking for a medical director, I don't necessarily need to only be bringing current medical directors to the hiring team. I could bring maybe someone who might be at a point in their career where medical director is the logical next step, or somebody who wants to make a career leap. You know, education, for example. When folks were working in academia and then want to move over to the pharmaceutical world, all of a sudden the business mission switches from serving education to basically serving therapies, serving drugs, serving pharmaceuticals. And so you're still involved in sales. It's just a different type of sale. And again, it really speaks to the example I mentioned earlier, where if I'm going for a headhunting position, I introduce myself as a headhunter. If I'm going for a recruiting position, I introduce myself as a recruiter. An educator is selling education. That same person might be selling scientific education. That same person can easily sell scientific products by leveraging their scientific education. And this is something that Dan talks about a lot. And by the way, I found Dan very organically. I heard one of his podcasts and he made a statement that just let me know that this guy has something most people don't. There's some life experience there. There is this really authentic others mindset, which isn't that common, I find, on YouTube. Maybe I don't search enough, but that's just my experience. And what Dan talks a lot about is if I want to be like Mr. Successful over here, I need to sound like Mr. Successful over there. If I'm striving to get a promotion and continually running into walls, then I need to look at those before me who have already been promoted. What did they do prior to that promotion? How do they speak every day that opened the door for that promotion? What is it that I'm doing that they aren't because they're somewhere I'm not? And ultimately, that's where I want to be. And so the communication piece of this is just so important. What's really important is not just what we say, but really how well we listen. Because only when we understand what needs to be said do we have anything to say at all. And that could be in person or on the resume or on the LinkedIn. And so clearly I'm very nerdy about this topic. It's really something that hits home for me. I've been in jobs that I'd call my mom every day crying my soul was being sucked out of my body. It was just a terrible experience. And so I just am so passionate about this because I know how it can literally change someone's life. And thanks, Bunny. Good job, YouTube. Bunny is here on a Sunday on her off time, getting personal and professional development and tips. That's a star talent right there. He's coming back to work already.
Too much. I have a great question that I'm sure would be perfect for you.
Any suggestions for older applicants getting high-paying tech jobs? Cybersecurity, which has entry level as well as more. Any suggestions in terms of what? What is your objective? What are you trying to do?
I apologize for cutting you off again. It's very difficult to judge with the delay.
And cut away. But Miko, tell me a little bit more about what you're trying to achieve or what your objective is. That's right, Renee. Only as old as
Thank you. I can't really figure that out either. This is a great question that we got from a few different people.
Okay. Can too much experience be a negative when searching for a new job? Absolutely. Are more seasoned workers presumed to be past their expiration date, so to speak? So too much information is always a bad idea because we can't retain it. People remember stories. They don't remember facts and figures. And again, too much information is much more likely to include irrelevant information than a clear-cut, concise statement. I can solve your problem. Here's how. And then that is something to be mindful of. There is a lot of unconscious and conscious bias that goes on in the hiring process. And so it's important to target a level that's appropriate to your years of experience in the industry. If you're someone who feels as though you're facing ageism, that's another reason I believe to really hone in on only the applicable experience. Sometimes I'll include what's called an additional experience section, and it will include positions folks have held that go beyond the previous 10 years. I only do that and it really is short. It just includes the company, the title, and the length of time that they were in that position. I only include that if it speaks to the role they're pursuing. So if you have a ton of experience because you've just, worked a career lifetime already, then again, it's more an incentive to only include the most recent, only include things that are going to advance your candidacy. And so if I wanted to present someone who maybe has been in the same position for the past 10 years, how am I going to fill up one whole page with one position? I'm going to ask questions about the context of the organization. Before you were there, it looked like this. Since you're there now, it looks like this. And then those will become our new bullet points. And so to answer Swimming with the Fishies, which is one of the coolest names I've ever seen online, when you have a lot of experience, let's just highlight the ones that are most applicable to your current target. And in that way, we can build out almost like a longer story with maybe a little bit more detail created only by relevant context. Dan's laughing in the background. He won't hear this for a minute from now, but I hear him right now. And so we build a one-page resume sometimes based on 6 months of someone's previous experience. Maybe they've been at the job for 7 years. Maybe what they did the first 2 years, we really don't care to talk about. Maybe it's just the past 6 months. So again, it's really hard to create the resume and just create the resume based on me. I need to create the resume based on you. And that's the mindset that needs to go with you throughout the entire hiring process. What can I do to help your decision-making process? What do you hope to accomplish in the next 6 months with this hire, which is what Dan asked about at the beginning of the video, the $1 million interview question. when you go to interview and they ask, do you have any questions? You really need to have some questions, because otherwise, what are you going to thank them for after the interview? I'll just let that sink in for a minute. It's a real give and take. If you picture a football field, we want to move the football down the field towards the goalpost. You know, you create a LinkedIn profile that acts as a snapshot.
Thank you. While that's sinking in, could you please let me know how to answer the question, how much money are you expecting to make? And I have somebody who is saying that they are not getting shortlisted even after adding keywords. He doesn't have any experience or extracurricular activities. What do people do if they're job hunting for the first time to boost their chances of getting an interview? And when they're asked, how much do you expect to make? What do people say?
So how much you expect to make, you can do a search on payscale.com, glassdoor.com, salary.com. You can try and reach out to folks on LinkedIn who are in that position already and just let them know, hi, I know you don't know me, but I'm going for a position that's, similar to yours, and I'm not quite sure what my salary expectations would be. Do you have a minute to share that with me? Most people won't answer, but some will. Again, it's how happy do you want to be? How free do you want to be? How fulfilled do you want to be? That will correlate to the extent of effort that you're going to need to put into the job search. And then you can cut that in half if you partner with me. But if you're, a first-time job seeker, meaning like a new grad, or maybe you're just entering the workforce for the first time, again, it's what have you been doing that applies to the role you want to do? That's what we're going to talk about front and center on the resume in an upside down triangle. I'm curious how he knows that his resume isn't getting shortlisted. Does that mean you're not getting any calls back, Hitesh? You're just sending it out and no one's responding?
Thank you. I also have a couple. I want to send a question from. Oh, that's a good question. How would you know that your resume isn't getting shortlisted? And this question about if you are an older. Whoops, I don't want to interrupt you.
No, you go ahead.
Okay, if you are an older applicant getting into cybersecurity, how do older applicants, because I can relate to that, my brother can. How can older applicants like my brother apply for jobs that generally have a youthful corporate culture? For example, my sister-in-law and my mother actually have both dealt with this. I believe that women deal with this a little bit more than men do, where they have been told in recent positions that maybe they're just not a good fit for the culture, and that translates into the culture of youth that we have here. I guess you're not a good fit for it because you don't seem to share the same, age. But so how can people, if they are an older applicant, first of all, know that they're going into a company that might be an issue? I'd rather know that up front. And how do they maybe turn that into a positive without making it such an issue? You know what I'm talking about? And
yes.
Oh, and do you have any right now, Heather? We had talked about this beforehand, but I didn't get the time to write up anything. Do you have any specials, or I know we're getting close to the cutoff time soon. Could you please mention if you have any specials or things that you are offering to people at the moment, if you have any, first of all, openings to help them look for jobs, improve their resumes? We have 3 people that I've taken their resumes, and I'm going to be getting you a review for those. But if people after this event contact you because they want some help either on their resume or job hunting, do you have any specials right now? And how much does that normally cost with someone like yourself?
So it's
now I know you're going to be more than the average person.
It's a case-by-case basis. And it also depends, how quickly do you want the resume? Do you also want a LinkedIn? Are we also going to partner together throughout your interview lifecycle process? In which case it would be a bundle. But let me get to the good question here. Anyone that comes to me from this broadcast will get 20% off whatever it is they want to buy. 20% off. And again, we will have an introductory call, at which point I'll learn a little bit more about you, what you've done, what you're trying to do, and then I'll be able to estimate the number of hours that I'll spend on your case, so to speak, and then send you a quote, and we'll take it from there. In terms of the question you asked before that about older folks trying to get into a youthful culture. So the question infers that they've already been engaged in the interview process at some point. If you're already in the interview process, I mean, nobody should be telling you you're too old for the job, because that's highly illegal, number one. But if you're getting that feeling, then again, when you're at the interview, it's important to remember this is your time also. You want to, and I believe this is the best method, address the objections head on. Dan mentioned this in one of his videos, I believe, where he said, in the interview, you should ask, as one of your last questions, what do you see standing in the way of me getting this position? And I know exactly why he said that. And it's a very effective tactic. And I want to also bring to the table here another point of view, which is, if I'm asking them instead, why, what's the purpose of this hire? Like, what do you personally hope to see this person do within the next 6 months? Then I can regurgitate that information to them in my follow-up thank you note. I do recommend one custom thank you note for every single person you interview with. You don't want to just win over one person of 3 on an interview panel. You want that whole panel, when you walk out of the door, to look back and say, I really like her. Let's cut this short early. Just write her up an offer. And we can do that. But then one more question you asked was about the culture, sort of a cultural conflict with ageism or demographics. Again, know that this is your right, and it's very illegal for you to not be considered for a job based on any of those factors. And the truth is, it does happen. I discovered this wonderful app called Blind. It is an anonymous social networking site. And so employees go on there completely anonymous, and they spill the beans. I mean, they'll let you know if there are toxic management leaders, if there is shady HR practices going on. They also really, voice out loud some of the great things that they experience happening in their workplace. And so it might be the case that before I begin my job hunt, if I'm someone who might feel like I'm facing, a lot of potential objections along the way, let me go to blindapp.com. Let's see what these people are talking about. Let me go to glassdoor.com. Let's see what people are complaining about. And if I see a company has a reputation for continuously releasing older people from the hiring process, well, then maybe that's just not a target that's worth my time to pursue. This is cool. I get to watch Dan react to my statements. While he's doing that, I'm going to read.
Gosh, thank you. Yes. I love this question. What is the best way to positively explain the reason for wanting to leave a current job? That's probably one you get a lot.
Oh, actually, I don't, but I should. And that is a fantastic question. I mean, that's really so let's think of the upside down triangle, and I'm trying to show you one here. This isn't good. Upside down triangle. That question is the apex, I think it's called. It is the thing that starts to open up the entire conversation. So why do you want to leave your current job? What do you mean? You're Nike. You're the best sneaker maker in the world. Who wouldn't want to work for Nike? And yeah, that can sound kind of cheesy, but that's the idea. So then you do a little research and you realize, oh, well, I understand that Nike donates 67% of their annual revenues to Make-A-Wish Foundation. And I personally have a personal, affinity for helping youth that are facing challenging situations. I've done my research, and you guys are the ones leading this charge. This is my personal passion. So why would I want to work anywhere else? And again, it's all about that value matching. And that type of corporate cultural alignment really can transcend any ageism or any sort of unconscious bias that folks may face otherwise, just by submitting a pretty template that they found on, some of these fancy resume sites, or, copying somebody else's resume, or a lot of folks are, inclined to just copy the information that's on the job description and put it on their resume, which is a smart idea. I like that mindset. However, it goes back to what I said in the beginning, which is, if I just write you a better resume based on what you're doing, I'm just going to make you look more attractive for the same job you already have. If you give someone a resume that recounts the details of the job advertisement posted, all you're really showing them is that you know what they need. But what if there's someone next to you showing them how well they've accomplished that need? Well, who do you think is going to be invited in to interview? You know, Marissa brings up a good point. She's heard that no pictures on the resume is good to prevent ageism, but you pretty much have to put your pic on LinkedIn. And that's absolutely true. A profile on LinkedIn without a profile picture, I think it has, with a profile picture, is 70% more likely to be engaged with. And that's just human nature. Imagine if you were out in the street and, you walked around, saw people with a beanie pulled over the head. You're probably not going to run up to them and ask how their day's going, because it's just there's no invitation to connect when we can't see one another's eyes. There's no invitation to connect. In terms of putting a photo on your resume, this is a great question. Photos and graphics are good for creative industries, and that's it. And I'll tell you why. There's something called the applicant tracking system. Now, a lot of people are really afraid that their resume doesn't pass the applicant tracking system. That's only true in 2 instances. Within an applicant tracking system or applicant tracking software, which is something our friend from YouTube earlier, I'm sure knows a lot about, is something called OCR. It's either Ocular Character Reader or, I think it's Ocular Character Reader. And that is actually the mechanism that's scanning the words on the page. The scan is then running against the algorithm of the keyword search query that the recruiter or the hiring manager put into the applicant tracking software. That's the same query that's being littered into the job advertisement post. It's the same query. It manifests as hashtags on LinkedIn. I'm looking for a sales development person, hashtag sales development. And so when you put a picture on a Word document, you're skewing the OCR technology, and it can skew the remaining read of your document. So I always say, to be ATS friendly, no tables, no weird graphics, no really exotic fonts. Just stick to the boring, clean Arial, Garamond, Helvetica. And then never, ever, ever, I'm going to pause here, never put any information in the header or the footer of the document. This is where many people put their name and their phone number. The OCR and the ATS don't capture information in the header and the footer. So if you've submitted 100 resumes and your name and contact info are in the header or the footer of your resume, you have essentially, potentially submitted a blank resume 100 times. And if that's the case, I urge you to go change it and reapply to all those positions and just see if you get some phone calls back, because unfortunately we start to internalize the rejection or the lack of responsiveness as being unemployable. But it might be the case nobody knows who you are. They might love what they see in the body of the document, but they don't know who it belongs to. Sure, swimming with the fishies. The Department of Labor, the Department of Labor, or just I'm in California, so I look up California HR laws. There's SHRM, the Society of Human Resource Management. Some of these resources on SHRM you'll have to pay for, but many you won't. But it's true. All of the laws are accessible for our review and interpretation, and it's really important to know your rights. Evar, and I apologize if I'm mispronouncing that. She's asked if there's any advice for those switching careers as it relates to crafting your resume on your past experience, yet wanting to go into new industry. Yeah, absolutely. I wipe the slate clean and let's start brand new. My approach with every resume creation, but most especially some career transcendence, is I'm going to interview you from the point of view of your respective hiring manager. And your responses to me are going to create the new content on your resume. So folks oftentimes ask me for samples of before and afters. And I always explain, I can give them to you. Obviously, you need to remove contact information to respect confidentiality, but it's not going to do anything for you. It's not going to be meaningful for you because this is not within your context. And so when we're doing career jumps, we're storytelling, it's all about the context. Here's a really great example. And do I have time to go into it actually, Dan? Sure, I'll take 1 minute. Okay, here's a really great example. A nurse. A nurse pretty much does the same nurse job anywhere she goes. So how do we not make a resume that's, five positions of the 4
Of
exact same
course.
points? So then I'll start to ask the nurse, well, what's different about this position than last position? And she'll say, nothing. I stick needles in people's arms and draw their blood and then tell them they're healthy and have a great day. I'm like, okay, well, typically the needles of the arms you're sticking right now, are they men or women? She'll say they're men. Okay, are they above 50 or below 50? They're above 50. Okay, now let's move to the position that you held before that as a nurse. When you were sticking needles in those arms, were those adult arms or children's arms? Oh, those were children's arms. Oh, okay, great. Were there any like special, medical population, maybe children with gluten sensitivities or children with, I don't know, some type of specific child disease? And she'll say, yeah, it was actually always with, kids with gluten sensitivities. So now all of a sudden, it's not just a boring, repetitive nurse resume. We're telling the story of the places in which that nurse worked. And that hospital has a population that's going to be different than the previous hospital's population. And so those details about, I'm a nurse for seniors suffering with gastrointestinal disorders at one position versus I'm a nurse treating, people with mental or developmental problems in a psych ward. That's two completely different stories. It's all one person's experience, and it fits really nicely and concisely on one resume that excites people while they're reading it. It's interesting, and they're like, I have to interview 20 people. Let me bring in the most interesting one, and that's what telling the story really does for you. Is a PDF usable by the OCR system? It is. Word doc, I don't know about Google Doc. That's a great question, SD. Thank you. I'll look into that. And then when Dan and I jump back on next week, we'll have that answer. But absolutely, the PDF, always send your resume in PDF form, expecting it to go through an applicant tracking system. And, it's not a beautiful template. It's a clean template. Like I said, there are no characters or markings that are going to skew the reading. And then if you know someone you can give the resume to, if you know a person inside the company, you can attach it to the email and we can use a much different template that adds some color or maybe a different font or maybe a different positioning. So it's kind of like art. Yeah, it's definitely like a form of art when it's what I call a designer resume versus an ATS resume. Okay, so Julie's asking, I submit a custom resume with experience prioritized to position, but use my cover letter to really hone in on why I'm the right fit for the job. Does anyone actually read those? Haha. Thanks, Julie. First of all, kudos to you for taking the time to invest in your own career path and development. I think cover letters are great if they work, meaning if you use it for the purposes for which it's intended, they can really add value. The only way they can take value away is if you're using a template and it doesn't make sense to apply to the job you're using it for. But the cover letter is really designed to answer a question that you can't explain on the resume. Or if there's some aspect about your personal background. Maybe you've been an accountant for 30 years, but you volunteered at People Assisting the Homeless for the past 25. And now you want to switch careers to the nonprofit. Would you, some people would say, well, your volunteerism wasn't professional experience. Why would you put that on the resume? First of all, I would. Why? Because it speaks to the target that you're pursuing. But secondly, that's a great way to utilize the cover letter. Let me answer any anticipated questions or objections my reviewer may come into. This lets them know that I think like them. This lets them know that I'm taking initiative to already have the answers to the questions that they weren't aware I would know that they would have to begin with. And secondly, it gives you an opportunity to demonstrate your ability to communicate. So it's not just about technical writing, it's also insight into one's emotional intelligence. Wow, Dan, this was so much fun. Can you believe it's noon already? Huh. Yes, so Bunny is confirming that they reject a lot of resumes for something. It flashed off green. I don't know.
I know. I was trying to get you to stick with us, but I know you have other things to do as well. You're a very busy woman, and I'm so grateful for your time here today, Heather.
Thank you, Dan, so much for having me. Thank you, Dan's audience, for welcoming me. This was
Heather,
so
how
much
about this?
fun. Yes.
As I apologize if I'm cutting you off, but by the way, there's somebody in the background, I believe, that's trying to steal your spotlight. I think they're what do you call it? Bombing you?
Is it named Bella?
They're video bombing you. There she is. What is your partner's name?
So the rescue named her Bellini, which is a terrible drink. So I shortened it to Bella. Bella, come say hi.
Bella, that's Bella. Bella is Bella bombing you. And we're going to be back next week. Would you, if you're so gracious as to come back, you would do it at the same time next week? Is that right, Heather?
We're going to meet everyone here this time next week. Absolutely. And before I go, I just want to elaborate on one thing, because Miko is bringing me back to my favorite question to answer. Elaborate on the upside down triangle. So the headline is the top part of the triangle. It's the platform, the foundation. That's your qualification statement. Then you have a summary underneath, or sometimes it's bullet points that expand on that title. So Dan, communications expert, let's say communications guru is Dan's headline. Then his summary below is going to expand a little bit more on why we use that word expert or specialist. And that's going to be done through those, that formulaic positioning of the elevator pitch, my qualifications, your demonstrated success, which is your proven track record. And then from there, we're going to do a key skills section, skills that relate to this specific position. As we move down, we hit your professional experience. And so basically, each section of the resume is a preview of what's to be substantiated in the section following. So the way you can even envision, you have the company's name and the title and the years. So the title is talent acquisition expert or talent acquisition manager. And then my bullets underneath describe, it substantiates what I did that qualify me as someone with that title. And so that's basically the flow of the resume. And if we were to take an aerial view and back up, we can see that when we include the LinkedIn profile and the interview lifecycle process as well, the LinkedIn starts and piques someone's interest. It is designed to have someone connect with you live and request your resume. Why? Because they want to learn more. So you can't spill all your beans in the lobby, as I've heard once before. You can't give them everything all up at once. They go to your LinkedIn profile, they want to know more, they ask for your resume, and then again, you give them a little bit more, but you don't give them the whole story, so that they actually call you into the interview to find out more about that story. And so what started off, this is kind of strange, so forgive me if it's hard to follow. Upside down triangle on the resume, and then actually the process of getting the job is almost like it's going up this way. Each stage is designed to invite you and advance you to the next, which is supposed to be a little bit bigger than the previous stage. Once you advance through that round, on and so forth. So hopefully that clears it up. And feel free to reach out to me at info@higherwriting.com if you have any specific questions or want to work together. Again, Dan and I will be back next week. Where I'm going to let Dan do a little bit more talking because he's just too fun to miss.
That's awesome.
And Dan, thank you so much for inviting me onto your channel, into your world. You are truly the best, and I love you. This is so awkward.
Thank you, Heather.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you, Heather. And remember, that is info@higherwriting. Is that correct?
Yes.
Let me know if it is or not.
Yes.
And then next week, Heather, if you could kind of gear up for it. I mean, this is my big cliffhanger for everybody. Woo. I'd like to, if you wouldn't mind, talk about some issues that specifically would affect women in the workplace. Like, what are some things that women might want to keep in mind as they are looking for new jobs? Let's say in the tech industry or in the information in the information analysis industry, because I have some associates who work in those industries, and I know that they have some very specific challenges being women in those industries. So if you could think of any tips for that, that would be great. How could they stand out more or face the challenges that are unique to women? Also there are a lot of people entering the workforce these days who have things like Asperger's, who are someplace on the spectrum. And I'd love any tips that you might have for people who are dealing with those types of issues. And I'd like to thank you so much for being with us here today, Heather. You were absolutely phenomenal, and thank you for putting up with my technical challenges and just taking the ball and running with it, and for putting up with my brother. I know he was video bombing, or he was text bombing us, so I appreciate you putting up with all of that. And maybe he'll join us next week. I think that would be a lot of fun. But
it's Marty
thank you,
that's
Heather.
trying to break into tech, isn't it? Thank you, Dan. Thanks, Dan's audience. It was really great to have you. See you next week. Thanks for your questions and your support and patience. Dan, you did a fantastic job. You're an engineer.
Marty's a spotlight stealer. He's always been a spotlight stealer. He just can't stand it when he's not in the spotlight, so he'll steal it just to warn you, Heather.
Oh, well, it's okay. He doesn't. Well, now he does know what I look like. I was gonna say I could just go do like a surprise, video stalking on him. Send you the video, and you could just totally expose him. Okay, everyone. Thanks so much. Have a great week. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Heather. And thank you, everybody, for watching today. I'll talk to you soon. This is Dan O'Connor, signing off.